Welcome to Digital Boundaries for Healthy Living, Part 4. So let's begin by reviewing some of the ground that we covered in Part 3. We looked at the phenomenon of perception gaps, which is how well a person is able to predict, understand, or summarize the views of people with which they disagree. And there are certain types of content that helps to decrease perception gaps, which is a good thing. So some content will be like, okay, I think what these people are saying is that, I think what these people are saying is this, and they're not really understanding each other because this is why they're talking past each other, but um, these are the shared assumptions. These are the different assumptions. Really trying to kind of look past the talking points and all the ideology to to really understand what people mean. And there's certain types of content that when we're exposed to that, our perception gaps go down because we're able accurately to understand, summarize, and predict the views of the people um, that think differently to us. But there's other types of content that increases that. So, for example, if you're a Republican and you have a diet of Fox News, or if you're a Democrat and you have a diet of CNN or other channels, the perception gaps will increase because you will be burrowed further and further into ideology. I found this when I was staying with some people who were watching Fox News, and I just got so angry at the Democrats. And then I was in a hospital in the emergency room, and they were playing CNN, and I just got so angry at the Republicans. I was, wow, am I really so changeable after everything I've studied about perception gaps and information literacy um, and epistemic virtue? Can I really be manipulated like this? But I could. I mean, these um, channels and programs and pundits are very good at stirring up the passions because that's how engagement is retained. And of course, when your goal is engagement, then your goal is not perception gaps. The people who really help us understand what's going on in whether it's political discourse, social commentary, in public discourse of any type. The people who really help us to understand this tend to not have the same entertainment value. So anyway, yeah, we looked at this was all in relation to an important boundary that we have to be cautious of the type of digital content we expose ourselves to. And we need to ask, is this likely to increase or decrease our perception gaps? Is it helping us to cultivate the virtues of the mind, the epistemic virtues? So I encourage you to check out part 3 in this series about that. Now, yeah. Okay. So let's go on to the next slide now. So this particular boundary is about content. I'm suggesting we sometimes need to take a break from the superficiality of the world of podcasts, social media, mainstream news, and not just mainstream news. Alternative news, including conspiracy theories, are sometimes the worst at at creating perception gaps and leave us stranded in delusion. But um, and so this boundary is to do with the imperative to seek out deeper levels of understanding rather than content that is merely optimized for engagement. But again, this is to do with content. And most of the important boundaries go beyond specific content to the messages embodied in the medium itself. We're all familiar with Marshall McLuhan's famous quote, "The medium is the message." And this is especially true in our world of screens and digital interfaces, um, because these devices, particularly the phone, the iPhone, and similar models of smartphone. These devices mediate reality to us. The phone is a reality mediating device, and this forms our view of the world. It shifts how we behave and act and think as a species. But this is happening at a level far deeper than specific content that is coming through these devices. And this is because every technology carries with it certain tacit assumptions about the world and ourselves. And over time, this forms us. So our tools, even the pair of scissors, it's not neutral. It has a certain worldview baked into it. And so once we understand this, then it empowers us to know what boundaries can be effective. Here is a short clip of my co-author Joshua Pauling discussing this with my friend Annie Crawford.
And to connect that to technology, that's, I think, what we need to do with technology is that technology itself, like a movie, has embedded in it a worldview and values and meaning that are being communicated to us as we use the technology, and we're being formed in the meaning and the values and the worldview of that technology as we use it. But most of us don't know how to read that. We don't know how to see that. And so that's a lot of the cultural apologetic work I'm trying to do, is trying to help people have the tools they need to not just read the words that Barbie's saying, but to read the forms, that the worldview that's coming through the plot, that's coming through the characterization. And so we need to have technology. We need to learn how to read the meaning that's forming us in our social media, in our various forms of technology that we use.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so good.
that's right on. That's really why we wrote the book, you know. It's exactly what we're trying to do in the book. Um, Trying to get us to think about how technology is forming us, or maybe even deforming us, and what it means to be a human being. We talk a lot in the book about how technology is not neutral, right? I think that's what you're getting at there as well, Annie, right? Um, that baked into the technology is a certain assumption about the world, a certain assumption about what it means to be a person. And so what we need to do is sort of peel back the layers, right? Layer by layer, so that we can understand the technological environment that we're in. And then we're going to be better able to then deal with it, right? And live a Christian life and respond to it. So yeah, in the book, that's really exactly what we're doing. We're trying to peel back the layers, right? To help people get a better understanding of the technological environment we're in, that technology is not neutral, that it's always nudging us in a certain direction. Now, that's not to say that it's evil. That's not what we're arguing in the book. We're not arguing that technology is bad, but we're also not saying that it's neutral, right? And I think a great example to make this sort of drive this home is to think about how many tools, you're in a workshop there, Annie, many tools are designed for the right hand, okay, to be used by a right-handed person. Even scissors are designed for right-handed use. So that technology, that pair of scissors or a certain tool that's meant for the right hand, it's nudging you as a person to use your right hand, okay? So it's not neutral. And we encounter that every day, right? From the shifting mechanisms on a car are all for the right hand, scissors are for the right hand, on and on we could go. If you're a left-handed person, you experience that a lot, right? Right-handed people don't even realize it because we favor the right hand. Now that may seem like a silly, minor example, but that's always happening with technology. It's nudging us in a certain direction. And if we can help people realize that, then we're on the right track, right? Then we can go from there, how we respond and so forth. So in the book, we have sections that deal with technology and education. We have sections that deal with technology in the church, technology in the home, technology in politics, society. And what we're trying to do is sort of walk people through how to think about it and then what to do about it.
Okay, thank you, Joshua. Once we realize that technologies nudge us in a certain direction, then this opens up space for boundaries. Now, I've suggested that boundaries are an invitation to reject binary thinking about digital interfaces in favor of prudence. So I think of it like automobiles. I happen to believe that the automobile has had a detrimental impact on human society and human community, despite the benefits. But other people think that cars have just been the greatest thing since sliced bread. But we should, whether we think that cars have been harmful or beneficial to society, we should all be able to agree about one thing, that given the type of world in which we now live, our sons and daughters need to learn the driving skills and virtues. A responsible parent would not simply hand the keys over to a 12-year-old or even a 15-year-old and expect that everything would be fine. First, the parents train their child to drive safely and responsibly. And this happens as dad and mom model good driving skills to the teenager. But modeling and instruction in driving skills is not enough. The parent will also need to offer modeling and instruction in the character traits necessary for being a good driver, including virtues like self-discipline and patience, charity, and so forth. The parent will also need to model the virtues of the mind, the epistemic virtues that are correlated with good driving, things like attentiveness, concentration, situational awareness, and so forth. And as the adolescent learns to drive, boundaries of time and place are also offered for his or her protection. Now, it's the same with digital interfaces. Whether we think digital interfaces enhance or hinder human flourishing, whether we think that they're bad, good, neutral, um, we should all be able to agree that given the type of world in which we live, in which it's impossible, almost impossible to survive without these devices, given this type of world, we need to learn digital skills and virtues. Our world is becoming so interconnected with these devices that unless you live out in the country and are self-sufficient um, and have an independent means of supporting yourself, it's not really possible to survive without these devices. You can't go and if you're in an emergency, you can't go to a phone booth anymore. You can't do banking. Most portals for work, even work that isn't remote, requires certain forms of authentication before you can log into the portal, which requires things like codes being sent to your phone and so forth. I don't think this is good, just like I don't think that that our dependence on the automobile is good. But given the type of world we live in, our sons and daughters need to be trained in the skills, virtues, and boundaries constitutive of flourishing within the digital ecosystem. So just like you wouldn't hand the keys of the car over to a 15-year-old without first giving them training, similarly, it's irresponsible, and I have no hesitation saying this, it's irresponsible to hand a kid an iPhone and expect everything will be fine. First, you need to teach the boundaries, the character traits, the virtues that are constitutive of flourishing. And this is more so the case with the phone than the car because the phone is a reality mediating device. Now, this is even more true. Everything I'm saying becomes even more imperative now that AI is slowly being integrated into all aspects of society. Whatever our views are on AI, whether we think it's good, bad, or neutral, or somewhere in between, it becomes imperative that we study and teach the skills and virtues. The skills and virtues relative to AI specifically. and digital interfaces in general. And here we may draw on the wisdom of C.S. Lewis, who remarked, good philosophy must exist, if for no other reason, because bad philosophy needs to be answered. Similarly, we have a mandate to teach good habits when using AI, if for no other reason than bad habits need to be addressed and mitigated. And this is the imperative of information literacy. Information literacy includes um, skills at retrieval, evaluation, behavior, and habits. How do we have good habits when it comes to working with information? And and obviously there's overlap between these four categories. And now that our world is becoming increasingly integrated with AI, information literacy includes being able to answer questions like the following. What types of research are large language models and other types of AI suited for? What type of research is AI not suited for? Are there dangers involved in using AI as a research tool? What are the most effective ways of setting up an AI-based information query, for example, in systems like ChatGPT? And is it possible to practice AI-based retrieval methods in a way that aligns with and even strengthens our God-given intelligence? Now, I don't know the answers to all these questions, but these are the types of questions that we need to wrestle with if we are to achieve information literacy in the current climate. But this is just one section of information literacy. How are neural networks produced and how do they function? How does the answer to this question inform our evaluation of bot-generated content? What are the best practices for fact-checking auto-generated content? Do chatbots like ChatGPT reflect the secular worldview of the content that was used to train them? How might the answer to this question inform our evaluation of bot-generated content? What virtues are important when performing due diligence on material produced by AI? And then, of course, there are questions of behavior, how we behave with content that's produced by AI. Is it ever appropriate for students to incorporate bot-generated content into a writing project? And what about plagiarism? Can I take something from a bot and put it in my own words? Um, how do I synthesize material from a bot into personal knowledge? Is that even a good thing to do? These are all questions that we have to be wrestling with, and they come under information behavior. And of course, there's questions about habits, and habits is really a subset of behavior. But I've included them here as a separate section because this is where boundaries really come into play, including many of the boundaries we've been talking about in this series. Such as, look at the third one here, what types of offline behaviors help one to be virtuous when interacting online with AI? So questions like how to preserve your attention, how to keep a good sense of focus and critical thinking, what kind of boundaries can help with the epistemic virtues so that when I interact with AI, I have wise habits of mind that help me to flourish rather than flounder. Now, none of these habits and boundaries will be effective unless we cultivate a positive vision rooted in higher goods. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I want to have bad habits working with AI, or I want to be addicted to my smartphone, or I want to spend the day doom scrolling on Instagram. Um, Rather, digital dependency and bad habits develop gradually as we are nudged toward fulfilling our human needs and desires through technologies. So the key is to develop new habits to meet our human need for connection, belonging, and relationships in ways that don't require maladaptive technology use. The positive and attractive vision is a vital key. No matter what specific rules and restrictions you ultimately adopt, the most important thing is to situate your approach within an intentional, larger positive vision and pattern for living. Intentionality is crucial here. For our human desires to be truly formed and shaped towards truth, goodness, and beauty, we can't just remove the bad things. We must replace them with better things. And the possibilities here are endless, but at the very least, we might consider some of the following suggestions that Joshua put in our book. Take digital habits to focus on higher goods, such as reading and reflection, and family fun and board games and so forth. Develop hobbies and habits that require bodily skill and mental acuity, such as art, music, traditional handicrafts, woodworking, car repair. Host phone freedom events with other families where you can have like a phone-free sleepover or phone-free maker events, maker days, dances, so on and so forth. You could have a lot of fun with this. Hone the art of conversation with your family through structured conversations, discussing a book or having a debate or doing family devotions together, as well as unstructured conversations, times around the campfire in the car and so forth. When you turn off your phone, these types of activities will will happen naturally, especially if the family is intentional. So ultimately, good habits and boundaries respecting digital technology need to be situated within a larger positive vision and understanding of human flourishing. Most of you are familiar with Odysseus, who, when he sailed by the Isle of the Sirens, he had his sailors tie himself to the mast so that he wouldn't hear their music. Their bewitching music lured sailors to their death, and it was impossible to resist. So he ordered that his sailors put wax in their ears so that they wouldn't be tempted to veer off course. But Odysseus, he wanted to hear the music, so he had the men tie him to the mast. It's a wonderful story, and it illustrates the need for boundaries and to have boundaries that um, tie us to the habits that we want to cultivate. But my friend Chesterton Cobb pointed out that when the Greek hero Orpheus sailed by the Isle of the Sirens, rather than tying himself to the mast, he played more beautiful music on his harp or his lyre. He played music that was more beautiful than the bewitching song of the sirens. And that's how he was able to navigate that safely. So one might say that Orpheus cultivated a positive vision that made the siren song pale into insignificance. And so I encourage families and individuals to find ways to imitate Orpheus, to create activities and environments that offer the grace and beauty that's deeper than anything our digital distractions have to offer. And in fact, the the approaches of Orpheus and Odysseus are complementary. We need properly curated environments and routines that bind us to good habits, just as Odysseus bound himself to the mast. But when framed and understood within the context of an intentional positive vision, even the forms of self-denial and self-discipline that we practice have a larger purpose, pointing us towards the higher goods and ultimate ends. And then even self-imposed limits become a joy and are actually invigorating and liberating for us. So yeah, so I want to end with that thought. I'd like to just invite us to look beyond our digital interfaces to the God-given desires that these machines hijack. The desire for connection, for meaning, for significance, for transcendence, for belonging, and for joy. Where can these desires actually find fulfillment? And how can we cultivate lives and communities that offer the reality of which our digital preoccupations are but the shadow? Now, if you would like any more information about boundaries or helpful tips about using technology responsibly, or if you'd just like to see whatever I'm thinking about and working on, you can follow my Substack or my blog. My blog has a mailing list you can sign up to, so does the Substack. And of course, this wouldn't be complete without pointing you to the book that Joshua Pauling and I wrote last year. Joshua Pauling is a Lutheran minister, and it was such a joy to work with him. You've seen him in some of the video clips I've shared. And I was just so grateful to be able to um, glean from his wisdom as we were working on this project together. So this book is available from Amazon, and again, although this video series had some additional information, a lot of it you can find in this book. Well, thank you so much for letting me be part of your journey towards um, towards boundaries, and more than just boundaries, to a flourishing life oriented towards the higher goods. Have a wonderful day.